Members of the National Assembly in a rowdy session today over summoning President Bola Tinubu on issues of security, and there are those who are also concerned about contractors and their payments. More insight into the fake agency probe as the National Assembly is weighing in after President Bola Tinubu says the ICPC should probe and give a report at a stipulated time. We get more insight into that tonight. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimalo, live for you here in our Abuja studio. Let's begin tonight with some of the stories coming from northern Nigeria, where leaders of the region are now thinking about how to find a permanent solution to the issue of insecurity. Northern Nigeria has been greatly impacted in the killings and the violence that we have seen in our country. So the governors of the 19 northern states today have inaugurated the Board of Trustees of the Northern Nigeria Security Trust Fund, describing the initiative as a major step towards strengthening regional security coordination and supporting efforts to combat insecurity across the region. Let me allow you to listen to what they said at that meeting, where traditional rulers, leaders of the region, and the chairman of the forum, which is the Gombe governor, Mohammed Unuwayaya, said the trust fund is established to mobilize sustainable resources for intelligence sharing, security coordination, and community resilience.
I am confident that the conference committee will waste no time in coming up with the final draft. History and posterity will be kind to Mr. President, the National Assembly, state governors, and other critical stakeholders for supporting the creation of state police, which has the potential of promptly tackling our challenges of insecurity.
That the trust fund is not intended to become another layer of bureaucracy. It must not be allowed to become an administrative structure that merely holds meetings. Rather, it must function as a focused, responsive, and credible platform for resource mobilization, strategic support, alignment and coordination with federal security agencies and other relevant institutions and stakeholders in order to secure our states.
So much more for us to deal with right here on the program tonight, because my guest tonight is a president, and we shall be dealing with some of the issues on the state of the nation. Stick around with me. But let me serve you first with some of your political roundup stars.
Governor Umar Fintiri of Adamawa State believes President Bola Tinubu has laid the foundation for a better Nigeria. The governor stated this during an engagement in Madagali and Michika local government areas of the state as part of the All Progressives Congress's ongoing mobilization campaign aimed at strengthening party structures and building momentum ahead of the 2027 general elections. He describes the economic policies of the federal government as the best for the country. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has recognized Major Agbo as the national chairman of the New Nigeria People's Party, replacing factional chairman Bala Yusuf. Addressing journalists at a news conference, Major described the update on INEC's portal as a validation of his leadership. Mr. Major also announced that the party has commenced uploading of candidates for the 2027 general elections. He appealed to INEC to grant a short extension to enable the party meet up with the timeline, blaming initial delays on the Commission's late compliance with court orders. Some stakeholders of the Accord Party are asking the party's National Working Committee to immediately upload the credentials of Mr. Olawepo Gbenga Hashim as the party's presidential candidate for the 2027 general elections. Addressing journalists after a meeting of the Accord Alliance movement in Abuja, the group maintains that the decision of some of the party's leaders not to feature a presidential candidate and rather to adopt and support President Tinubu in 2027 is undemocratic and should allow their own candidate to go into the election with others. They call on all party members and supporters to mount pressure on the leadership of the Accord Party to forward the name of their candidate and asked the NWC to upload Olawepo's credentials on INEC's party candidates portal. Chairman of the Kwara State All Progressives Congress APC Reconciliation Committee, Abdul Wahab Lawal, has appealed to aggrieved members of the party to embrace dialogue and reconciliation following disagreements arising from the party's primary election. Lawal made the appeal in Ilorin during a news conference on the committee's mandate and activities. He said the committee was constituted by the leader of the party in the state, Governor Abdurrahman Abdurazak, and the state APC chairman, Sunday Fagbemi, to reconcile aggrieved leaders and members ahead of the 2027 general elections. According to him, although the task before the committee is challenging, members remain optimistic that peace and harmony will be restored within the party.
Thanks so much, everyone. There you have it, your political roundup stories. Let me also let you know that today we've got a very interesting scenario which played out on the floor of the House of Reps, where we saw a rowdy session. It was a stormy plenary where lawmakers were at loggerheads and in a very rowdy debate on issues relating to security, contract, and a few other issues on the state of the nation. It was the lawmaker, Alex Mascot from Abia State, who raised a motion for President Bola Tinubu to address the parliament on the state of insecurity in the country and how to deal with the situation. But let me allow you to listen to a part of what built to a crescendo, and at the end of the day, the Speaker of the House, Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, had to call for a split and for the vote on the motion that was moved. This was how it all played out earlier today. Take a listen.
To confirm that the motion that I raised here in this Hallowed Chamber had been adopted. You did mention that you were referring the motion to be handled by an ad hoc committee. I don't know if I heard correctly. But, Mr. Speaker, my prayer, sir, is that the Father of the Nation should visit us here at the Hallowed Chamber so that we can engage him face to face, sir. Honorable Mascot, to engage the committee on the whole here in this Hallowed Chamber so that we can interface. You should government. No. It is only ideal for Parliament to invite people delegated with responsibility. You call for amendments, nobody amended prayer 5. Exactly. To invite the president. If anybody amended prayer 5, we will invite the president. And since
I would want to kindly call for the House to split so that we can take votes of each of the two sides for or against.
No!
That is my ruling if we want to go further.
That was how it all went down on the floor today, and things really got to a head. But tonight, I'll take you to a rather interesting scenario playing in our country, especially when there are concerns where situations surrounding associations like Nigerian Bar Association is concerned, which sometimes is like the conscience of the society. So we saw the pushback from the Nigerian Bar Association over the elections and the claims of postponement of the election. And the NBA had come out to say that to reject the Attorney General's recommendation to postpone the July 18 national election of the party, of the association. The NBA says only its National Executive Council can alter the election timetable, and the association insisting that the AGF lacks constitutional authority over NBA internal governance. We also know that the NBA has been drafted into the Presidential Committee on the State Police Working Committee. These are very fundamental issue. And tonight I'm being joined by the president of the Bar Association, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Afam Osigwe, who is live for us here in our studio. It's a pleasure having you joining us tonight on the program, Mr. President.
Thanks for inviting me.
I appreciate it. What does this mean? Why do you think that the AGF made the recommendation? What were the issues? Why? What are the intent on the advice or the recommendation to postpone the NBA election?
Sean, sitting here this evening, I cannot for certain say that the AGF gave that advice. And I'll be shocked if he did. Now, the letter that circulated, or the advice or the directive, as it was called, that circulated on social media, was not on the letterhead of the Attorney General of the Federation, even though it bears what appears to be the Attorney General of the Federation's signature, but it's not on his letterhead, and there was no direct communication to the NBA. But out of abundance of caution, we felt we should react to it. But the issues that gave rise to the situation we find ourselves in briefly put as follows. Some persons and an organization known as Egba Amofiodo, Association of Yoruba Lawyers, went to court contending that since the NBA has a zoning formula in its constitution and the presidency of the NBA for this year has been zoned to the west, and by the way, the west extends to Edo Delta, that they have the prerogative to choose the candidate, and that having chosen a person they prefer as their candidate, that the court should restrain the electoral committee of the NBA from accepting any other candidate. And the court granted that injunction, as curious as it is. And we oppose that suit on the ground that it negates the democratic principle for which NBA stands for. And that Egba Amofiodo can win an association registered by NBA cannot claim a right under the NBA Constitution. Because under the NBA Constitution, it is a ground for disqualification for any forum, branch, or section of the NBA to endorse a candidate. And we thought that a court could not rightly injunct or order the Electoral Commission to only accept nomination for one person. And we thought that was a usurpation of the electoral process, and it would be undemocratic to see that only one person would run, more so when it was obvious that more than one person was interested in running. And that was the second suit by Ibrahim Lawal and 3 or 4 other persons, claiming that the Electoral Committee of the NBA was not properly constituted during our NEC meeting in Benin, which took place in November. And strangely again, they procured this injunction in the month of March in a suit filed in February, claiming urgency. Now, this committee was set up in NEC in November, inaugurated, they didn't go to court, and suddenly claimed the emergency and got an interim order. And the court also granted injunction restraining the Electoral Committee from running. We challenged these suits, and luckily for us, the orders lapsed, because under the High Court rules of Oyo State, if an interlocutory or the expertise of that is obtained from a court, and it is not extended by the court, it automatically lapses. And the 2 orders were not extended by the court, and there were no applications filed to extend them. We were worried about this development. And it is not strange, I must say, before I get to the role of the ACM, the Attorney General of the Federation. Prior to this time, a former Attorney General of Oyo State, whose name I don't want to mention on air, had come to me in January to tell me that he came with a message from Egbo Mofiodua that if me as president refuses to hand over to their preferred candidate, that I would be the last president of a united NBA, that they will plunge NBA into crisis and there will be no election. So when the lawsuits and injunctions were filed and injunctions granted, it became obvious that it was this threat, because it was not a message, it was a threat. He told me that they would make sure that that election never held. So all the allegations he was hearing, they are contrived. And I said to him, as long as there are more than one candidate, lawyers will be entitled to vote for a candidate of their choice, that no person can force us to accept one person. So because of this lawsuit, the Attorney General of the Federation now wrote to me as NBA president and past president and other stakeholders for a meeting. And in that meeting, everybody, it was roundly agreed that there was no basis for the suit, that it was political, that it should be withdrawn. And Chief Wolo Olanipekwe was asked to chair a 3-man committee to meet with the parties to the lawsuit who were not in that meeting and the candidates with a view to withdrawing the suit. So it was a narrow thing. And so when we saw that directive purported to be from the Attorney General, and it was being circulated all over, we felt that there was need to make the point clear that we do not believe it was from the Attorney General, and that even if it was from the Attorney General, that the Attorney General cannot take away the independence of the NBA. We are not a department in the office of the Attorney General. If there are issues about our election, they have to be resolved in accordance with the provisions of our Constitution. The NBA Attorney General would appear not to have any power under the law, under our Constitution, to issue directives which sounded like decrees to us. Dissolve the Electoral Committee, remove the service provider, among so many other directives. And we thought that those were not the essence of the meeting. And since the Attorney General called for a meeting for an amicable settlement, if there were such settlements reached, he would reconvene the meeting and all of us would look at it. And if we agreed, we would sign them and it would be filed as terms of settlement, not as an order, as if emanating from a headmaster to his students on what to do. And we felt that it would be setting a dangerous precedent to suggest that an Attorney General, assuming that letter came from him, could willy-nilly issue directive to truncate the democratic and electoral processes of the NBA. And that independence should be jealously guarded. We respect the Attorney General as the official head of the bar, but respectfully we disagree if he purports to have power to issue such directives.
It doesn't have the executive power. He's a ceremonial head of the bar because he assumed office. Yeah. But the question I'd like to have you been able to speak with the AGF on this matter?
Well, I haven't, because I do not believe the Attorney General wrote that directive. First of all,
and he has also not reached out to you.
Well, he has not reached out because I thought if he read that, he would have officially written to us conveying those decisions. They were never written. We saw it on social media. Indeed, some people...
No official communication.
No official communication.
No mail, nothing.
Nothing. Some persons are of the view that that may be an AI simulated letter. And because of its ability to affect our electoral process, we had to react to it because, out of abundance of caution, we had to react to it. To avoid people being misled that the election would no longer take place.
There are a lot of issues and angles to this. And maybe, Mr. President, maybe you are not aware that Egbe Mofiodua is probably trying to invoke the sections of the Electoral Act. We are in the election period and invoke the option. There are two options for primaries, consensus and the direct primary. They probably are doing consensus. Maybe that's why they are advising the NBA.
I would not know. The Constitution of the Nigerian Bar Association has no such provision.
So
it has provision that if
they wanted to draw from the electoral law to say, look, there's consensus. Egbe Mofiodua wants to, put his own consensus candidate for.
I do not begrudge them if they want to do that. But they would also respect the rights of those who do not feel bound by that decision to freely contest. And they can mobilize the vote for who they support but can't stop the electoral process or insist that their only candidate and those candidates must be the only one to run. That would be undemocratic.
Jokes apart, that was a joke too. I guess to humor what has become a satiric way to describe the situation that is happening in the NBA. But are you curious, though, Mr. President, that the NBA is looking like it's going to be used as an altar for politics ahead of 2027 with what is going on?
Well, sometimes I wonder, because when lawyers would go to court to argue that persons should not be allowed to run, it becomes antithetical to what the bar stands for, promoting the rule of law. And if senior lawyers would support it, stridently argue for it, and courts enable them by granting injunctions, and people will be grandstanding that unless things go their way, there will be no election, then you will not be far from it by saying that we are being used as an a lab for political experimentation, which shouldn't be. The independence of the bar should not be trifled with. And our ability to have a democratic process that is exemplary to Nigerians should be respected.
Are you curious too also that the zoning of the next president of the bar also coincides to the general Nigerian notion of the zoning to where the next president comes from? And in that sense, that agitation of politicians wanting to have the soul of the NBA is heated.
I believe that politicians will better serve by having an NBA whose soul is not controlled by politics, whose soul is controlled by rights, a due process of law, obedience and fidelity to the rule of law, and nothing else. No matter how much their self-interest may want it, they need a bar that stands for the right thing, that will be able to tell them the truth and be able to advise constructively on how best to move the society forward. No person, no politician should strive to put the NBA in his back pocket. But I believe that it's more about, within the bars, we understand, it's about ego. Certain persons feel that their word must be law. That if it is not there, if they can't have it their way, then let the house burn down.
Let me give you a joke with some of our friends who joked with me earlier. They said there are plans to turn the NBA. You know, when you're doing politics, either you turn a state from red to red, and to blue, from blue to red, and all of that. That there are plans to turn the NBA from an obedient NBA to an Emilokan NBA. That was a joke, anyways. But in that sense, how does the NBA navigate this stormy water? Now, the lawsuits are there, and the orders are there, and you had said, and the NBA had come out to say, it is sacrosanct. 18th is sacrosanct, and it's not going to change. That is what the NBA has said.
Well, the Electoral Committee, ECMBA for short of the NBA, has proposed the 18th of July for the election. And barring any unforeseen circumstances, the election will proceed as scheduled. And if that date is to change, it can only be by that body or by NEC. And it's only the National Executive Council of the NBA that can dissolve the ECMBA or give directives. But absent from that, no authority outside of the bar can do that. And we would be urging the civil society, the government, and every person to note that it will be in everybody's interest that the bar be left alone, that we will be allowed to do our own things the way we are meant to. We are doing everything to ensure that the process is free and fair, and that the process is transparent. And we're only asking people to join us to ensure that that works. No external influence, no internal influence should in any way try to subvert that process. Look, and the whole world is watching. Indeed, we are going to invite the International Committee to monitor that election and development at the bar. I'm signing those letters tomorrow to send them to the embassies, and also alerting them to possible attempts to undemocratically subvert the NBA, and that they should take interest and also look out for the possible persons who are participating in this who are attempting to subvert the independence of the bar to achieve an unwholesome objective.
The NBA has consistently and is actually designed to be the conscience of the nation and a defender of constitutional democracy. But the NBA is now found itself entrenched into these thick politics, and right in the middle of our electioneering period in our nation. What do you imagine that the politicians want to make or use this for?
It will be a mockery of the society if we allow ourselves to be used, or if we unwittingly portray ourselves as being no better than the political parties and the politicians. We are members of a noble profession, and our elections should be exemplary. Courts should not be used to truncate our democracy. Neither should politicians be used to truncate our democracy. Our voting process, electoral process should be such that people would want to emulate. But unfortunately, you have many lawyers maligning the electoral committee, even in the absence of any credible proof of any wrongdoing. You read a senior advocate, for example, writing that he is not going to vote because he knows the election will be rigged. I mean, I don't get that.
And the past election of the NBA has been digitized.
Oh, yes. For example, in my own election, one of the persons who contested against me claimed that before some of his supporters could vote, they discovered that somebody had voted, stolen their identity and voted. And we challenged him, produce one single name, and none has been produced. So people create a story to try to delegitimize the process.
Is that the same process that the digital?
The same process.
Digital voting
the same process. The digital process.
What's the assurance of the full proof of security?
Now there's one number attached to every lawyer. And so when an OTP is sent, it is sent to that number attached to your profile and your email address. You have to use the OTP too. No different from what is used in the banking industry, where an OTP is sent to you in a secure OTP.
And it expires after some time.
After some time. And it can only be used once. And can be sent to another number. And to improve the process, because of those who allege without proof of identity theft, our constitution was amended last year to stipulate that if I think less than 6 hours after the close of polls, that the list of accredited voters who voted must be sent to all candidates so that they can also forensically study it to find out if there were persons who purportedly voted or purported to have voted but who didn't actually vote.
Does this occur to you? And I'm more concerned because we need to take a prototype of sections of our society because the NBA is a microcosm of a macrocosm, the larger Nigerian society. And you look at what is happening in the larger Nigerian election and electionary context, where courts are used to subvert the political parties, and there are agitation that there is a possibility that we are drifting towards a one-party state. People thought it was a literal one-party state. You might have multi-functioning political party operating, but really they are so handicapped, they are not fit for purpose. And that is what the politicians want it to look like. That we just have a active political party and everybody is morphed and shaped into one. And they ask you, we have many political parties. Why are you asking the question about one party state? Because our country has not been drawn into this kind of mess. And that is the same thing that the courts are being used to undermine the electoral process, not only at the larger stage, but in the NBA. So the NBA is also a prototype of what is happening.
Oh, yes.
So we go back to the judiciary, which is now being used to destabilize our society.
No doubt.
Some
time ago, before my last appearance here, we issued a statement emphasizing that multi-party democracy must be respected and be seen to work. Having multi-party democracy, which is largely made up of weak and almost inconsequential parties, which maybe adopt the candidate of a major political party, does not make for democracy. And the courts granting injunctions to register the register and making it difficult for political parties to function makes it difficult for a democracy to really be described as a democracy. And like I said, or like you rightly said, there was also an attempt to stifle democracy by the unfortunate orders granted by the high courts in Oyo State. Despite the electoral jurisprudence that you don't grant injunction stopping an election, but the court can make a pronouncement on the outcome and either sustain it or set it aside. So if not that those orders lapsed, the intention, maybe as threatened by that Past Attorney General, whose name I do not still want to mention, was to ensure that there was no election. And it unfortunately portrays our courts in a very bad light. That courts could be used to truncate democracy, either within the bar, in the larger society, or in any other organization.
And don't forget, we need to be good students of history. This is not the first time that the Nigerian Bar Association is being hit during the election. It does look like every year of the election in the NBA, the devil visits the NBA. And we have seen...
Not quite.
We see a lot of controversy. Lawyers usually get divided during the election period. I see a lot of people who suddenly became your enemy 2 years ago. You know, you'll be wondering, you've been friends for years. And there was a time also that they almost want to balkanize the NBA, almost want to split the NBA along regional lines. You forgot that was the time they registered. They registered another version.
That was the year the NBA, the platform, the Malame Rufai, and it was believed they had a hand in trying to balkanize the NBA, but unfortunately that we closed ranks and that didn't happen. In 1992, which the person who came to threaten me referenced, the courts were used to truncate NBA and plunge it into crisis. And it is my suspicion that those who are out to cause this problem are still looking on using the courts to ensure that there is no election. But we pray that no judge would allow himself or herself to be used to stop the NBA election, to achieve or aid selfish aims of some persons.
Because the role of the NBA is to speak truth to power, to hold systems accountable, judiciary inclusive. Are you worried that if the NBA is crippled or affected or impacted with all of these politics, that our nation and systems and institutions is going to greatly suffer?
Naturally, when the courts are used to make it difficult for civil society organizations, which I consider NBA to be part of, to function properly and elect its officials, then the society would suffer. In areas where they play the role of advocates of accountability and transparency in government, and then respect for due process of law and promoting the rule of law, it would suffer naturally.
There are those who will expect that the NBA will be more assertive in its approach to a lot of things. And by the way, when a lot of us saw that the NBA has been drafted into the constitutional amendment process of the state police debate on the working committee, there are a lot of people who thought that maybe we are headed in that direction. Give us an understanding of what role the NBA will be playing in that committee.
Now, there initially was an aversion, as I stated yesterday at the inauguration of the committee you just referenced, aversion to creation of state police. The fear being that it will be abused by state governors, it will be politicized, and they will become like an official, I'm trying to use a kind word, official tool of oppression. But then with the worsening state of insecurity in some parts of Nigeria, most Nigerians now agree that the national police system can no longer work, that there is need to have a state police. But in having it, to address the fears which in the first place made it difficult for us to have a state police, we have to ensure that the right constitutional structures are put in place, working conditions for them, minimum standards of operations for them. An NBA has nothing against government per se, but wants a government that respects the rule of law and does the right thing. And if this process, the NBA has been given an opportunity to contribute to drafting laws that will ensure that these fears are addressed, that we enact laws that will make for a better policing system in Nigeria, the NBA will not run away from that. We may criticize, but we should be willing to also constructively engage and contribute to building a better society. We don't have an aversion to government as it were, but we would want to contribute our quota to ensuring that whatever fears people may have, we take care of them, and that a police system that really works, that also eliminates conflict and ensures that they receive good funding from state governments is put in place. And to that extent, we are wholly committed to finding a solution to that and playing our role in that working group.
And there are timelines and there are a lot of indices that are being brought into how the working committee should work. But what are your fears about that committee and how effectively it could deliver his role?
Well, at the moment, it will be hasty if I talk about fears. But the timeline maybe is very tight, and people work in members of that group also have other commitments. But I believe with a proper dedication, we'll work and hope that the National Assembly will find the work output useful enough to guide it in passing the right quality of laws and have a proper debate and engagement with the citizenry and the various tiers of government to ensure that the right thing is done.
Do you think that, because I've asked governors who are the major criticism of state police is the fear of governors and how they use it. And I've had a conversation with some of the governors. and I had opportunity to ask them face to face that you are the problem that Nigerians are having in how to utilize these model that we're looking at. But some of them have told me that Sheung, it's almost a magical wand. If they get state police, they will be able to fight insecurity. But do you believe that?
So if you see in some states, insecurity has been better fought through some in Borno State, for example, they have civilian JTF. In some southwestern states, they have Amoteco. In my home state, Anambra State, they have I've forgotten what they call it. Right? They have different groups doing that.
Ububiago
and all of them. Yeah. Yes, they have shown that, and they have some vigilance group, and they have greatly helped in curbing insecurity, in maintaining peace and security in some of their communities. And so to that extent, I believe that state police, which will incorporate aspects of community policing, will bring policing closer to the people, and also will likely be made up of persons who live in those locations, not transferring somebody from Anambra to Zamfara or Zamfara to Osun State, where you also may not know much about the culture and the language of the people, and also have this, do away with this overarching policing where an incident in Ile-Ife is being investigated from Abuja, putting so much cost on people. I know the issue of abuse is there. But like somebody asked me, has the federal government also not abused the Nigerian police to also oppress people? It's about fidelity to the rule of law, doing the right thing, making sure that the courts are strong enough to act as protectors of citizens where their rights have been violated, and holding public officials and officers accountable. If we get that right, if our judicial system is strong, if our enforcement ability is strong, and we hold people accountable, these fears will not be there.
What are the non-negotiable constitutional safeguards that must exist before state police becomes operational?
A strong judiciary, appointing the right persons to that place, respect for the rule of law, respect for the fundamental human rights of people, due process of law. They may sound like big-sounding words or very theoretical concepts, but if, in fact, we pay attention to this and implement them, there will be no problem. If a governor knows that his actions can be challenged in the court, that the court will be bold enough to say to him, you are wrong in a situation where he or she has erred, then we'll have a strong society. So the judiciary has to be up and doing, has to be respected. There has to be a good civil society, and then also judgments of court obtained must be enforceable and not be thwarted through a failure to obtain attorney general's consent or some other excuses we give, because accountability will make it easy for us to ensure that bodies set up by law do their work and respect the rights of citizens, and the fears will be allayed.
There are conversations we've had on this program and about state police, and I've had discussions and preparations to some of these programs allows one to go into deep research, consultation with people, and getting to understand the minds of those who are knowledgeable in some of these areas. And one of the facts which I'll plead with you, SAN, to let the committee know that it's going to be a waste of energy and resources if we do not have a research and a paper, a position analyzing the present problems of policing in Nigeria with the hope of fixing them, because people thought that whatever that is coming is going to erase and take away what we have. No, we are still going to have this existing. We are not sacking any police officer. We are not taking away the police station. They will remain. But will the welfare problem go away? Will the psychology of the average police officer who believes that if he doesn't get to the road and stop you and collect money go away? Will the issues of no lights, no biro to take a statement in the police station go away? There are a lot of problems. If you are not solving those problems and you are creating another layer of policing, you are only photocopying more problems. And that's why we've come to that understanding on this program on several of the episodes. I'd like you to take that message to them to say, look, it's going to be a wasted effort. You waste Nigerian time, you waste the resources of the nation, the hopes and aspirations of a lot of Nigerians who believe that this is going to help us. At the end of the day, we come to naught. And I hope that you are able to help us.
No, I
tell
agree
those...
with you, so, Sean. You have to reform the minds of the men and women who are in the police force, some of whom would likely transfer to the state police. And if they take the bad behavior to the states, it's not going to be any better. The mindset. And then also their loyalty to whoever they are working with at the moment. And then their stomach. And then the weak supervision we have, the absence of internal affairs within police to be a check on the active police officers. The lack of accountability. And there's another major issue we shouldn't lose sight of too, though, and that is the fiscal assessment of the cost of setting up this police. Some state governments are owing arrears of salary and pensions. Are you going to also set up this new police and then start owing them? The lack of funding. I read a report some time ago that a police station gets about 20,000 naira allocation for a month. Are we going to see that where vehicles are procured for police without attendant budgetary allocation for fueling, maintenance, and other issues? Where the police officers buy their uniforms and other equipment. These are issues that must be addressed, and I hope that in the working group, these are some of the conversation, because we must make sure that police becomes part of the first line charges, and we ensure that they are properly armed, incentivized, insured, and funded.
Well equipped.
Well equipped. And then that technology plays a great role in the policing.
Because there are those who think that President Bola Tinubu is doing this for the political optics. If truly he's not doing it for the political optics, there must be fundamental change that we must see. For example, sir, there are about 8 or 9 departments, standard departments in the Nigerian police force, from mobile police unit to administration to legal. And all of these units, guess what, Mr. President? 2 of them are operational. The rest are ad hoc and supporting departments, which there are a lot of those who have come to say we are lacking numbers of operational, foot on the ground, boots on the field. That is what we are lacking. You do not need a police officer trained for 6 months, equipped with a gun, to be carrying bags for one politician. That you don't need that training. You could get a security guard to be doing that. You do not need a trained police officer to be the administrative secretary in the police station or at the headquarters or in any of the police stations. You do not need a trained police officer to be a lawyer for police in the police station. And these are roles that you can get non-police officers, like you find in the UK, for example, in part of the US, that are members working with with the police who are not trained. We need those trained police officers who can handle the gun, who can handle situation, the crisis, to be right on the field. And these are some of the issues that we have discovered also on this program.
You're talking about looking at the policing model we want. Maybe having, like you have in the US, district attorneys working closely with the policing, maybe FBI and all that.
Those who work in the police departments in the US who are not trained, who are not field trained.
So they don't have to be policemen to perform those functions. We must look at the kind of police we want and know what needs to be done and what needs not to be done. We need to look at the structure of the police and make it more, not only user-friendly, but very effective and efficient. We must get that right. We must also look at the relationship between the Ministry of Justice and the police and how things get done, a relationship with the other law enforcement agencies, and even the bailing process. What role they play in managing record keeping, data collection. Many people have gone through police stations without a proper record of their being processed in the police station. And yet there are provisions in the Administration of Criminal Justice Act requiring that every suspect processed in a police station, they must contain the data, fingerprint.
Let me shock you, Mr. Osigwe. If you commit a crime in Enugu, you only need to run to Gombe, and you are away from the eye of the law. Because nobody checks your biometrics, nobody checks you through the
crime database, reliable crime database.
The police station who arrests you in Enugu doesn't have your records in their police station. There's no even lights. Maybe they don't even have computers. And so when you go to Gombe, you just need to stay there for 2-3 years and go back
about you,
and you forget about you. So that is the story. But
so
give me a moment.
Part of the reforms we must work on.
Absolutely.
Not just setting up structures, but putting in the real things that make them viable and effective.
Give me a moment. We need to go on a break. Part of our concern is that it is not the absence of laws in this country. Don't forget. There are those who say, oh, the residual and the exclusive legislative list in our country needs to be unbundled. Yes, they have been unbundled in a lot of ways. There's local government autonomy, prison service, the state have powers, electricity, state have power to be able to generate their own, but have they been able to use it? A lot of these governors don't even remember that this thing exists. They ask for more powers, but what are they doing about it? We'll talk more about the state of our country and the way forward. The president of the NBA is still with me after this break. Thanks so much, everyone, for staying with us. The NBA president, Mr. Afam Osigwe, senior advocate of Nigeria, has been speaking with us on State of the Nation and the State of the Bar. Thanks so much indeed. There are fears, though, that it does look like you have a favorite to succeed you. Do you have an assurance that you do not? First of all,
Sean, I have absolutely nothing to do with the electoral process. So whether I have favorite or not is immaterial. The bottom line is that
have you shown any kind of tendency to anyone as though you wanted?
Absolutely
because
nothing.
That you want a coronation. You want somebody.
And then we had 3 candidates. How do you coronate one person when there are 3 candidates running?
And that's the reason why they say you wanted someone, a favorite. Someone
do you want me to tell you this? The 3 persons running for office each approached me to support them.
So who are you supporting?
No, but I'm not supporting any person. And I made a statement which they blew out of proportion. At our next meeting in Medugri, I said that there's nothing in the NBA constitution that prevents me or any of the other national officers from voting. That on election day, I will not be neutral. That I will vote for candidates of my choice. There are 10 national officers to be elected, to be voted for an election day. And they took it and said, I said I'm not going to be neutral. I never mentioned any name. I said I was going to cast votes for persons. Of course, if I'm going to vote, that means I have to vote for people. I have to choose among contending persons. The question anybody should ask, have I abused my office to make it difficult for any person to campaign or to aid another person? The answer is absolutely no. The NBA constitution makes the ECMBA independent. I have not interfered with what they are doing. I have had nothing to do with them. Yeah. So how does even what people perceive I'm doing have anything to do with the electoral process?
Can you give assurances that you're going to be neutral in the process?
But I have given that a lot. I'm going to be neutral because
will the process count?
Oh yes, the process. It is my hope. We nominated persons to our National Executive Council who believe have the credibility, the integrity to conduct a free and fair election. And so far, like I said, nobody can pin any fault with them. The major argument is that they are appointed as one of the service providers is an enterprise. And my question is, many of the reputable senior advocates we have in Nigeria run sole proprietorship. Has the fact that they run enterprise or sole proprietorship rubbed off on their competence and integrity? Right. Does the fact of not being a limited liability company stop you from doing a good work?
Mr. President, let's conclude the conversation about a very, very thorny issue in the country today, which is this allegation about this fictitious agency. The president has intervened. The case is going to court, I think, sometimes later this month. The man has been charged. The police arrested him in November last year. The case is between the chief of staff to the president, Femi Gbajabiamila, and this man, Mr. Adeniyi. And it owes a lot of implication. Now, the president has ordered the ICPC to intervene. The Senate said, the National Assembly said, they will wait until the ICPC release its result. But there are those of the school of thought that if there is a case in court, why do you say that an investigative body should then now probe into it? As the NBA president, so I mean, this scandal is scandalizing not only the presidency, but the Nigerian nation at large. And Nigerians need answers, don't we?
So, Sean, I have to be careful in talking about this matter. bearing in mind that some person or persons have been charged to court. But there are some facts in the public domain which I cannot help talking about or commenting on without touching on the pending matter in court. It worries me that, quote unquote, a fictitious agency is able to apply and get office accommodation at the Federal Secretariat, is able to apply and get permission to employ staff, and it is alleged also got budgetary allocation to it. If it was fake and is able to do it, then it speaks volumes about the lack of supervision and scrutiny in some of our processes. How was a fictitious agency able to operate for more than a year, inviting foreign diplomats, and they are attending?
The Deputy Speaker of the House, Benjamin, he said he was a victim because he was opposed to the pictures were taken.
And such an agency would also write letters to Minister of Foreign Affairs for note verbal for people to travel. So if it is indeed fictitious, how could it operate so openly and at such high level and get into the bureaucracy, open bank accounts?
CBN, 3 CBN accounts is what we understand.
Yes, so if these facts are taken as true, it should worry all of us and calls for a much better and broader investigation than has been carried out by the police.
Who knows what fake thing is going out there?
Well, if this has been found out, we need to also investigate the entire system, the entire budget.
Did he get a letter truly officially?
If there are also other bodies like this that may have been operating in plain sight and feeding fat on our Commonwealth. But as a nation, it does not portray us in a good light.
Mr. Afam Osigwe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, President of the Nigerian Bar Association, many thanks for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Sean.
Thank you indeed. That's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Wakimale. God bless Nigeria.